So welcome everybody that's joined our webinar today. We're delighted to have Eric Damery from Vispero joining us to present some new JAWS and Fusion features. I'll just do a brief introduction and then we'll hand over to Eric and he can talk to us about the various new things in JAWS and Fusion. So yeah, I'd just like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land where I'm presenting from, which is the Darug Aboriginal land, and pay my respects to any elders past and present. So just a little bit of webinar housekeeping for, I know a lot of us are familiar with Zoom now, but for anybody that's not, so we'll mute people during most of the webinar, but there will be time for questions. If you can send your questions using the chat box, which is Alt and H, or clicking on the chat bubble if you're a sighted user. I think we've got people from all over the world joining today, so it's great to have everybody. If you need to temporarily unmute yourself, you can press the space bar, and we are recording the webinar, and we'll be able to send you the link. And also Eric said if there are questions he's not got the answer to just at the moment, then we can always get back to you. So yeah, Quantum, we're obviously here in Australia, so we're delighted to have Eric with us, who's known as Mr. JAWS and has been with well, Freedom Scientific and now Vispero since the very beginning, and now is the product manager for the software, particularly JAWS and Fusion and whatnot. So without further ado, Eric, I will hand over to you. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Rebecca. And I'm glad to see the great turnout. A lot of people from the US I spotted on here as well. And what I'd like to do, I guess we've got at least an hour or so, and I'll talk a bit about what's going on with the software, what we've recently released, what's coming up, what our schedule's looking like for the rest of the year, maybe share some of those details. I'll demonstrate or show a feature or two where you'll want to look for them that are coming next week in the June update that's coming out. And then I'd like to open it up for questions. We can certainly take them through chat, but I think it's great if we can open it up if people want to raise their hands, and we'll get some live commentary on here. I don't know how many of you have been listening to our FS Open line, but Glenn Gordon and I have been doing that about once every 2 months. I think we're going on a 2-month schedule with that, and it works out really well. And we get about 50 or 60 people in, and we have some great conversations, some really good questions. So we'll try and follow that format. And thank you, first of all, to the hosts, Rebecca and the rest of the Quantum team. I know that we had talked, I was supposed to be down there in June this year. I was going to try and make the trip back down. We were going to do another trip. So soon, but maybe not as soon as we had thought, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, so release schedule. Most of you are aware we're on an annual release schedule for versions. We went over to the 2019, 2020, 2021. We started doing it like the way cars are sold. So it'll come out, the new model will come out in October, November timeframe. We'll be looking at 2021 this year. That work is underway. I don't think we've put anything to the beta testers yet on 2021, but we're very close to it, and we are working on builds. The 2020 version, we're going to update, as I mentioned, next week. We've got a final build of that one coming through tests this week, and we should have that posted by, I would think, Tuesday or Wednesday next week. We will also be doing a late July update for the 2020 build, and then you may not see anything on the 2020 side until late September, depending on if we've made any mistakes that we've put out that we've got to adjust for, or if Microsoft changes something or somebody changes something we have to release, we'll we'll try and act quickly, but we're trying to stay on about a 6-week cadence with the updates, and that'll get changed a little bit as we get to the release of 2021 coming. So in the June update, 2 key things are coming, and I'm going to share my screen if I can. So if anyone is sighted, you'll be able to see what I'm going to talk about here. We've created something called a Braille viewer. We've always had one, but we've completely updated this thing so that it now allows for text to be rendered visually on the screen in both Braille output and in text output. So if you're a sighted person looking at that, I'm typing in Notepad right now with JAWS. I've got it running in speech on demand mode so it doesn't interfere, but if you're someone looking at the screen, an instructor or somebody, this will make some sense. So I kind of call this the Braille and text viewer. And as I move across the text, you can see visually a sighted person looking at the screen will be able to see the dot representation that's being sent to the display at the moment. And it is linked back to the text that is actually being spoken. So I'm on a character on the screen right now. I know that the H of how was represented by the dot pattern that it's linked to. And if you've turned on contracted Braille output, you'll get the contracted Braille characters showing, and you'll get to see that the representation of the contracted Braille in the Braille viewer, in the text viewer portion of it. The feature can be customized by the user. They can go in and change color background, size of the fonts, size of the type of text you want. And if you go into the JAWS utility menu, down the bottom of the utility menu, you're going to find Braille and text viewer. And once you've enabled it, it just comes on. So whenever JAWS is running, it comes up on the screen. So this can be very useful for a trainer, teacher who is connected to a student, let's say, and having the student share their screen and they're using a Braille display and the teacher wants to be able to follow along and see what's going on. This will work quite well. As I'm doing here, I'm sharing it for all of you so you can see what my Braille display contains and what I've typed. There is also settings in the menu, and if you go into those settings, it'll come up, you'll actually land in the settings center, and it's under Braille and text viewer, and you can change the text color, the background color, highlight color, the highlighted text color. You can put it on the top or bottom of the screen. You can change the fonts, you can change the point size, and if you've got a multi-monitor setup, you can determine which monitor this is going to show up on your multi-monitor setup. So it all works quite well, and I hope for trainers, they'll get used to they'll turn this on for their students and it will just work. Now, if you're a JAWS user, you might ask, is this got a benefit to me? Can I go and read anything in the Braille viewer? And the answer is no, you can't get to it. It doesn't come into focus. When you launch the Braille viewer, whatever application windows you are running get slightly resized based on how much room the Braille viewer needs at the top of your screen to take. And so you'll have it won't interfere with how you use anything. You don't move focus to it. And you can move the mouse over this, but I don't believe that even if you've got mouse echo on, it's not going to read anything up there in the Braille viewer window. So it's not really designed for a blind user to go get information from. It's really there for a sighted person who's trying to interact with you. Once you've turned it on, it'll come on, as I said, each time. Now, if you're running, say, Fusion, and you're not running with a Braille display, there is a text viewer option, and you can still enable the text viewer. So I just turned off the Braille viewer, and I'll just turn on the text viewer. And when the text viewer is on, whatever text is being looked at is going to be presented there. So in my JAWS window, I hit the Alt key and I'm on the menu bar, and I'm highlighting the word language at the moment, and the word language shows up in the text viewer. If I go to a document, I'll jump over to Notepad here, and I've got some text. So as I'm moving on the text, I can see exactly what text is being read by the cursor, always by looking at the Braille viewer window itself. So this can be very useful if somebody wants to, if they're reading web content, and the web content, you know, some of the text is larger than other text. There's lots of different colors going on, things like that. You can set up the text viewer to be whatever color you want, to be whatever font and point size that you want. And then wherever you're reading with the virtual cursor, the information will show up in that text viewer window and be consistent for you. So that's the Braille and text viewer. It's going to be in the June release. If you've got Fusion and or JAWS, you'll find it sitting in the utility menu of the JAWS window. So watch for that. And again, once you've turned it on, it'll just stay on for you in the future. You don't have to mess with it. So the settings will stick.
Yeah.
All right. So that's the Braille and text viewer. I want you to look for that. Now, one of the other changes coming out, and this has been talked about quite a bit, if you've had a Bluetooth headset or some sort of a sound device that you're using connected to your computer, and you've run into a circumstance where when you start to navigate or type text, it stays silent for a second and a half or 2 seconds. You don't hear anything, and then once it gets going, it's okay, but as soon as you stop, it's like it's going to hesitate before it starts speaking again. This is an option built into the sound device to try and conserve battery level on your computer. Mm-hmm. And if you've experienced this, and a lot of people have with earbuds and different sound cards that they use, if you go into the settings center, once you've installed this June update and load up the default file and search for sound, you'll find an option called, oh boy, maybe I don't have the right build installed yet. Oh, yes, I do. I'm sorry, it's right at the top. If you type in sound, it'll be the first item you see. Avoid speech cutoff when using Bluetooth or sound devices, and it's a checkbox, and you can check and uncheck that. If it's checked, and it's not checked by default, what happens is JAWS is going to basically send some ambient noise to the sound device to make it think that it's always being called, so it will stop shutting itself down while JAWS is not speaking. And then it'll always be there. It'll be much more responsive. So if you've had a sound device or earbuds or something that haven't worked with your computer, that's the new feature, and you'll want to go turn that on. We don't turn it on by default, just because there is potential that it'll drain battery life ever so slightly, and we figured we don't want to hinder it, but this will be something to be aware of. And there's a help message in here to explain it as well. So again, if you go into the settings center, load the default file, search for sound, you'll find that feature and be able to adjust it. Again, that'll be available for JAWS and for Fusion users. I want to talk about one of the features that I'm using right now, which is speech on demand. So I'm running JAWS at the moment, and if I had a Braille display, I'm getting all the Braille output, but I'm getting no sound whatsoever. You're not hearing anything. But if I do an insert T,
title is JAWS O manual,
you hear it say something, because it was a screen reading command. So this speech on demand, which I use quite a bit because I'm a sighted person, and I like to have JAWS running all the time because I use it for keyboard navigation, and I do a lot of screen reading with it as well, obviously. And so speech on demand is a great feature because I don't necessarily need to get any speech output unless I ask for it. And I ask for it by doing screen reading commands like the window title, say all. But if you're navigating, if you're on a web page and you're navigating with quick navigation keys or even up and down arrow, you don't hear anything. But if you do a say line or you do a say all, it'll start reading, it'll read the text that you're on and keep going. So this is a really, it's a great feature for Fusion users. It's also a very good feature for JAWS users who have vision but are using the product for testing purposes or for navigation aid like myself and so forth. I think you'd benefit from it quite a bit. So speech on demand. Now, how do I turn it on? How do I turn it off? There's a layered command in JAWS that most people have gotten to know by now. Insert spacebar, and when I hold down the insert key, the JAWS key, and hit spacebar, you'll hear a sound. And that means I'm in my layered mode. And to toggle in and out of speech on demand, you use the letter S for speech.
Full speech.
And I'm back to full speech. And now if I Alt-Tab,
Meeting controls.
I hear
JAWS O manual.
I hear what I would expect to hear as I'm navigating. So everything is right back to normal. And again, to go back to speech on demand, insert space.
Alert space.
Space, the letter S.
Speech on demand.
And I'm back in speech on demand. So now as I Alt-Tab, I get nothing. So that's a little bit about that feature. Now, another feature I would like to share, most users are probably aware of this, but for those that are not, this is a very valuable feature. And that is the history of what was sent to the synthesizer, what has spoken. If you go into that layered mode, insert space, and the letter H, it brings up a window of the speech history. And basically everything that was sent to the synthesizer is listed in chronological order. So Bob Richards left the meeting. I don't know where Bob went, but he left us recently, and JAWS would have said that if I wasn't in speech on demand, because that was sent to the synthesizer. So that was the last thing. It also shows the alert, because there was an alert that was sent to JAWS from MSAA or from UIA, whatever it is, because of that event that happened. And I can basically go back through all the text that I've dealt with. I can select what has been spoken. I can copy it to the clipboard. I can paste it into a message somewhere. And this is a great tool for somebody who's trying to communicate maybe a problem, or they're trying to convey maybe an error message that came up in some application. You don't want to have to try and interpret what that error message is on screen. You can't necessarily get to it. If you get JAWS to speak it, you can then go to the history, select it, copy it, and paste that message into an email that you send to somebody. And so we oftentimes will ask people to go and do this. Now, I'll give you another example. Let's say somebody was asking you what version of Windows you were running. Well, there's a way to go in to the run dialog and type in WinVer, and it brings up a dialog box with the whole version number. So get it to read that information, and then insert space, history. You can select it, copy and paste it, and send it to them. It's very difficult sometimes to write all of that down. So the history window is a great feature. It's not something that's very new. It's been here for a while. We do have an issue with it for Fusion users, that you cannot use the mouse with this thing. If you start clicking the mouse around, the window disappears. I've got a bug in on it, and we're going to try and get that resolved. But if you are a Fusion user, you can use this feature. Just use the keyboard to do it. Mm-hmm. So that's a little bit about the history window. And again, the layered mode, I think the layered mode is a valuable tool. I'm going to show you one other feature that I like to demonstrate to a lot of people. And that is, let's say you leave this meeting and you heard something during the meeting, like maybe about the sound card, and you can't remember exactly how to, or the speech on demand, you can't remember exactly how I activated that, or you don't remember how to activate the history, or there's some other feature that you're looking to find, like how to increase or decrease the speech rate in JAWS without going to the menu system. There's a keystroke to do it, and you wanted to learn what that keystroke was. Well, there's a feature in JAWS like a Google search for JAWS commands. And this is a very good one to remember. Again, in the layered mode, insert space and the letter J for JAWS. And that puts us inside. I'll turn off
Full speech.
I'll turn off the speech on demand. It puts us inside of the JAWS command search, and I'll type in something like history.
Basic clear speech history.
And I just typed in HIS, and now I can see I've got some results.
Clear speech history. Insert plus space. Shift plus H heading level 3 link.
So for some reason you wanted to clear the history that's been sent to the buffer. You don't want somebody to see everything you've had JAWS saying, but you want to get it to read a specific thing. You can clear the history at some point if you want. It holds the last 50 strings sent to the synthesizer, as I recall. I'll tab forward in my list here.
JAWS key plus space, shift plus H link.
So it gives you the keystroke.
Show speech history, insert plus space, H heading level 3 link.
And there was the show speech history, insert plus space H. And so it kind of gives you the keystrokes. If there are Braille commands to do these things and you have a Braille display attached, it'll show you the Braille command to be able to make these things work as well. So the JAWS speech history or the JAWS search for commands is a very good tool. Insert space J. I hope you're taking advantage of it. If you're a trainer and you're teaching people how to do things, training them how to use JAWS, once they've got the basics down, you should be using this feature, because when they ask you a question like, oh, what was that command again to be able to say all the selected text? I've selected a bunch of text, but now I wanted to tell me what's there, or tell me what's on the clipboard. What's the command for that again? Tell them it's insert space J, and then type something in that will ring a bell for you, and you'll find it. So if you wanted to learn how to say selected text, you could probably go into the speech, the JAWS command search, type in selected, and you'll find the command for that. You'll probably find a few other ones that you didn't know about too. So it's a great tool to, if they get used to it, this is a great tool to help them really learn some of the power of JAWS and start doing some of the things that they haven't done before. So I think with that, I want to slow down, stop, and let me turn on speech on demand. And let's see if we've got any chat questions, or if anyone gets their hand up, Rebecca, maybe we can bring them in.
Yeah, we've got one question from Aaron. One command that doesn't talk yet with speech on demand enabled is say battery status, JAWS key shift B, but he's found it. Should that work?
That should work. That absolutely should work. Good catch. And I'm assuming that's Aaron Spears. Aaron, don't hesitate to send me an email or send it right to support. I'm going to get that in and we'll get that fixed. Won't make June, but I bet I can get that fixed for the July update, because you're absolutely right. That should be working.
Okay. Yeah, if anyone else has got any questions, if you want to speak, try the, don't know if we've got the raise hand option on this one, but otherwise, just let us know in the chat box.
Yeah, or chat in the window and we can bring somebody in. So let me talk a little bit about what we've done for COVID-19. I know that Quantum is participating. In the United States, we've done something with our portal, which we haven't gotten out to other countries yet, but we did something with our portal where we put a version out that people could use for free through June 30th, and there's actually going to be an announcement about that in about a week. Pay attention for that. I think you're going to find out it got extended for you if you've been using it, and that news will hit next week. And for outside the United States, and I believe Australia is one of those, if there is somebody who needs access to the software at home, they use it at work or they use it at school and they don't currently have a license at home, contact Quantum, and we are working with the distributors to make sure that they have an option to be able to assist somebody who can't otherwise get access to the software in this time. So Quantum has some solutions for them, and we certainly want to try and help people out, and we are going to try and look at extending it through the summertime here in the U.S. Schools are not going to get back into session, I think, until the fall. So any of the students who are using it at home currently, who are going to continue in summer classes, we're going to try and do something to get that extended for you. So watch for the news in the next week or so.
Great. We have had another question about the new line and new paragraph announcement. I think that's in together and not separated from what.
I think what we're talking about there is the blank line. Who is the question from? Maybe we can get them to raise their hand.
Yeah. I'll
see if we can bring them in so they can clarify. But
yeah, I know it's been an ongoing thing for this particular.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah,
this is Graham from Canberra, Australia. When you were in Australia 3 years ago, I raised with you the question that when editing, JAWS will not distinguish. Sorry, phrasing it badly. When proofreading and arrowing down, you cannot separate JAWS from saying new lines and new paragraphs. The new line is the word wrap, and it's no point saying that because you're already arrowing down. I've asked several times, can you not do what Window Eyes did and have simply a new paragraph indicated without JAWS saying new line every time you arrow down?
And this is in Word, Graham?
Yes. Yeah, Word 365.
Word 365. And so are there paragraph markers are turned on in this case?
Yes, you have to have paragraph markers turned on.
And I know we've gone back and forth about this several times because you've gone to great lengths to try and write this and explain it to us.
I have.
And I think we've gone to great lengths to try and understand it and see if we can get it changed. And I don't think we've succeeded quite yet.
In the settings, it simply says new lines and paragraphs. It seems they need to be separated, in my humble opinion. They need to be separated so that if people want new lines to be indicated, that could be one thing, but having the paragraph mark identified when one is editing is really important.
Well, let me take that one back offline again, and I'm going to make a note to myself here, and I'm going to go search the emails from you and bring this back up again.
I sent one about 4 or 5 weeks ago and haven't had any response.
You didn't send it? Did you send it to me?
No, just to the support.
If you can dig that one up and forward it to me.
I have it on my computer.
That would be great. Yeah. Send that one straight to my email, eDamery, and I'll get this resurfaced with the team and see if we can't get somebody talking about this again. Okay.
Just very quickly, I don't want to dominate. Why has JAWS stopped saying which way the page is oriented when you do the OCR?
It should not have.
Mine has.
And are you doing it with Perl or are you doing it with?
I mainly use the flatbed scanner, but I use
flatbed scanner, and it doesn't tell you.
But I use the flatbed scanner for something quick. If I'm doing a magazine or a book, I use Perl. But when I'm scanning lots of pages, I turn the speech on demand, the speech off, so it just becomes annoying. So but if speech is on, it doesn't tell you the orientation. Does not. Stopped about 1 to 2 months ago.
Well, that's definitely a bug. That one may or may not be in the system. So that'll be another one. I'm hoping we'll get I can go back through this afterwards, and I can fast forward through and get to these questions. So the real question here is, where did orientation go? Because it certainly should be there, and we just got to make sure we have a bug entered on it.
Mine has always said it after the second scan. It normally doesn't say it on the first scan, but after the second one it will, but it now doesn't.
Should do it on all of them. So that's a good, okay, well, good. You've said it now, and hopefully I can get this, and we'll make a transcript of it for myself so I can take these in. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Good to hear from you.
Okay, any other questions?
I saw the Gassman brothers are with us tonight. They're usually pretty chatty too, so.
Are you able, Eric, while people putting new questions, just go over the how you do the acquire with the OCR with yours?
Sure. So If you've got a, let's do this first with a Pearl camera. Let me describe the Pearl camera for people who haven't touched one yet. It's basically, I think of it as a camera on a stick. It's very lightweight.
Mhm.
It folds up and fits in a little pouch, and it can go right into a backpack very easily. And again, it's extremely lightweight, so you don't even know you're really carrying. So it's a very good portable solution for taking around. When you take it out, it's got a couple of push buttons, one on each end, folds the camera, which is on the end of one stick, up, and then it folds the leg piece down. And the leg piece has a piece of metal on it that twists 1/4 turn, and it kind of gives you a flat paper guide. And it stands up with that paper guide facing you. And then you could take a piece of paper, a paperback book, a magazine, whatever you've got, slide it up against the paper guide, and the camera will be positioned directly above and in the center of a normal sheet of paper. And has a USB connection, plugs into the computer. If you're running JAWS or Fusion, it will be aware of the fact that you've got the Pearl plugged in. Then you can use the layered commands, insert space, and this is an OCR feature, so it's O for OCR. And what you're trying to do is acquire text. So it's A to then acquire the text. So insert space O, and then the letter A, and it will, if a Pearl's plugged in, know a Pearl is there. It'll turn on the Pearl light. There's a light up in the camera. It'll lighten the paper. It'll snap a shutter. You'll hear a shutter sound. It's not really snapping a shutter. It's just a sound effect so that you know it happened. And usually within about 10 to 15 seconds at the most, it will start to read that page. And there is a setting in there that allows you, if you're gonna take multiple pages, you put the first page in, it takes a picture of it, you take that page away, put the next page in place, and as soon as it stops moving around and settles, it delays about a second or two, and it'll take the next picture. Then you can take that page away, put the next one in. And as Graham said, he puts it on speech on demand, so he doesn't have to listen to it reading the stuff, but he can hear it taking the picture, is my guess. And he's able to then go through multiple pages and put them all in, and then go back and read the whole thing later. So that's a little bit about a Pearl camera. Now, if you have a flatbed scanner plugged in, it'll work the same way. It'll just, when you do the insert space, O and acquire, it brings up a dialog box, and it's going to give you an option to pick whatever you're set up for, the scanner or a Pearl camera, whatever it might be. There'll be a drop-down list for whatever you're set up for normally, and you can pick the device from that list, and it will acquire directly from there.
Yeah, that's really useful, that one.
Yep,
Yeah.
it's a great feature. And again, that one works for JAWS and for Fusion users. And the Pearl, if you've got a flatbed scanner, it's great. It's good to use. If you need something that's portable, or you need something just quick and dirty, having the Pearl available is a great feature too. So I encourage people to take a look at that.
Oh, we've got the question, why can't you use the camera with the Abby software? Oh, the Pearl, yeah.
So the Pearl, yes, only works with OpenBook or JAWS. You can't use it with standalone OCR software. There isn't a driver set up for that. So it is designated specifically for OpenBook and for JAWS. And everything, it was designed in such a way to be very accurate, knows the distance, and it was just tuned and set up for OpenBook. So it was an add-on feature that we came up with. And the Pearl's been around for a number of years. It hasn't changed. It's a 5-megapixel camera. It's not so good to try and use for live shots. So I know people have tried to use it and move a document around and look at it. It just doesn't work very well because it's very unresponsive when you're moving the paper. it's not a camera designed for that.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Does anyone else want to be unmuted?
You guys have been doing some things with L-Braille down there in Australia as well, I assume?
Yes. Yes. So we had Jan on the
excellent
webinar a couple of weeks ago. So that was really
turnout has been phenomenal for the sessions that we've done here. And I know I don't know how the registration is going to work for the two national conventions here in the U.S., the ACB and the NFB, but of course the conferences are going to be virtual, and people are going to be logging in, and all of the companies, and certainly Vispero, we're going to do some multiple sessions during those two conventions virtually, and have a bunch of different people on. We're going to have a big L-Braille session during that. There'll be a lot of interesting people on talking about it, and I know that they have a listserv now set up for L-Braille that a lot of very good users are participating in. So if you're interested, even if you don't have the L-Braille, if you're interested to learn more about it, that listserv is a great one to join, and maybe we can get Larry or John to chat the information over to you, and you can share that with the group if people are interested in looking into it. And let me just give you, for anyone who's on who hasn't heard the spiel on the L-Braille, I'll give you my quick spiel. Years ago, this is something that Jonathan Mosen had been asking for, kind of like the Swiss Army knife of note takers. Want something that is powerful like a computer, can run all the applications I run on my computer, can work with the Braille device that I use on my computer, and can really interact with someone who's sighted as well. And the L-Braille can do all of this. You can plug in USB keyboards, you can plug in Windows wireless adapter and broadcast the output from the L-Braille straight on to a smart TV for a teacher. So a teacher sitting in the front of the room could have a student with an L-Braille running with one of these wireless adapters you can get for about $30, and it can they can sit and watch and see exactly what's going on that student's computer, because that's what the L-Braille is. It's a full-blown Windows 10 computer. It's got an Intel-based processing, i5 processing chip in it now, so it's plenty quick. They've got 8 megabytes of RAM in this thing now, I believe, and you know, it's a great device. Does it replace your need for a computer? I don't necessarily think so. I think having a computer is still good, but it's like, you know, it might replace the need for you to have a laptop, and at the end of the day, you can disconnect the Braille display and take it away and use it on another computer if you need to. And then the other thing is that while the L-Braille is a great device, and I would expect that you would use it as a computer for a good number of years, how long is that going to be? 7 or 8 years before the technology is expanded past that? Probably is going to be the case. And you'd want to probably move on to something else at that point. Well, you can disconnect that Braille display, because I can assure you that Braille display is still going to be working 7 or 8 years from now. And that's the expensive piece of technology. You're going to want to keep it. So it's a really nice solution to know that you don't have to give that up. So that's a bit about the L-Braille. And again, if they text chat over the instructions for the list, that's a good place to direct people to go.
Yep, and I can unmute. Scott's got the details on that. We've got a few other questions. I can unmute you, Maria, but she said, have you heard of instances of JAWS not reading table content with speech when a Braille display is connected, which is with Office 365, Windows 10, JAWS 2020, and a Focus 40, 5th gen?
If we can get her unmuted so we can have I'd probably ask a couple of questions, because I personally have not experienced this, but I've seen some conversations recently in recent days here going back and forth of people saying they're getting Braille output, but the speech has stopped for some reason. And this sounded like a very similar description. So I would be curious to find out if there's some pattern, some consistency, or if this just, does it always happen in tables, things like that. Any help you could share would be good. We'd like to try and get to the bottom of some of that.
Marsha, I think if you want to, Maria, sorry.
Yeah, hi. Yes, I am unmuted. So yeah, I will see if I can. I know I've seen it with a couple of work documents, and I'll see if I just create a blank table with some, fake data or something. I will see if I can have that consistently reproduced. Literally, I see all of the table content on the Braille display, but the speech stops.
And Maria, when you leave the table, does speech return?
If I remember correctly, I have to check. This one document I've been working with is a giant table, and so I'm not remembering off the top of my head right now. So,
well, if it's something you can share, if there's a way to zip the table, zip the document up, send it into support with a description of this is what I do, and when I get here, I'm losing speech. I'm still getting Braille output. And get that document to us so we can try and reproduce it. If we can reproduce things like that and get it in front of a developer, we can usually solve them pretty quick.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I'll see, like I said, I'll see if I can just reproduce it with a blank document too, and I'll put in that detail about whether it returns, and if not, I will see what I can do in terms of doing some data extraction and sending.
Yes, and then also make sure you try and include the version of Windows 10, WinVer, get that exact version, and the version of Office 365 that you've got, and of course the version of JAWS. Include those three pieces of information so that, because otherwise they'll just try and come back to you to get that. So if you can include it, always
yeah, that's fine. No, thank you. I'll get the more. I'm running the latest now, like the 2004 Windows and whatever. I updated my Office, and it said I had no updates and such, and the latest public build right now of JAWS. But yeah, I can include more.
Wonderful, excellent.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria.
Okay, thanks, Maria. Maria was also asking about the Perl, and there was a Freedom Scientific document camera driver for a third party.
Yes, so you can use that if you want to use, let me think.
I think it was KNFB, wasn't it, Eric? Or?
I think if you wanted to use it with something else, like with the KNFB reader, you had the Perl and you wanted to use it with that software, and boy, for the life of me, I can't remember exactly what it was. Maybe some user out there will remember. If you search on our downloads page for it, there'll be a description of what that document driver, that driver is all about. There was something in there, and it escapes me now. It's been a couple of years, and I can't remember exactly what that allowed us to do, but I'm pretty sure it was to allow the Perl to work with something else like KNFB Reader.
Yeah. Somebody was asking a bit more about what the LBraille is, but you did describe that. So and is it like the PackMate, but sort of?
I see Scott Erickson with his hand up there. We're going to bring him in, and he's leading this list on the LBraille, I think.
Let me just find you, Scott.
9:45.
Hi, Scott. Oh, he muted himself.
Oh.
Now you should be able to hear me.
There you are.
Yeah, how you going?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, good. So just a couple of quick comments. The tables issue, I see that quite a bit at work. Trouble is I can't share any of the documents. It's really strange because a lot of the documents I see it, not only do I see it where you lose speech in documents with, I find it with documents with multiple like stacks and stacks of tables, but I also find checkboxes in Word very unreliable to check in forms. And also I find a lot of the Excel things I have to use are quite large, and I find speech to be kind of temperamental there. Braille always works, Long live Braille, I guess.
Something's going on,
yeah,
and we got to get to the bottom of it. And,
yeah, it's really strange. Like, I'd be happy to share stuff, but the trouble is all the documents are internal documents.
right.
I'll
No,
see if
I
I can
understand.
create any, but
Mm.
yeah, I will have to think. I'll write to you offline, and we can kind of. I'll see if I can come up with some, de-identified ones and stuff. I find things like if you search as well in Word and Excel, sometimes that's a bit unreliable.
Unreliable as far as speech goes, you mean?
Yeah. So it will find what you're looking for, but then you hit escape to get out of the find dialog, and you just lose speech. It comes back eventually, but you have that 30-second sort of gap, and I'm not sure
and is
whether.
It different? And is it different whether you're using Eloquence or Vocalizer?
No, I'm always using Eloquence, mainly because the machine I've got has pretty boring specs.
And I'm guessing if it's you have limited space on the computer.
Yeah, because this is obviously my personal computer is much better, but what we get at work is what we get at work. So.
And what kind of RAM do you have on the work computer?
It's got 8 gig, but 8 gig should be fine.
8 gig should be enough for JAWS for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, let's try and keep the communication channel open on this one,
Yeah, sure.
Scott, and I may try and get you connected with a developer or two.
Yeah, sure. Cool.
And how often, one more question, how often do you see it? I mean, is this a multiple times a day, or it's?
Oh, I see it at least every day or two, but like I don't get the crashes. I'd have to spend about 80 to 90% of my day in a web browser using and getting data from Excel sheets and basically putting it in and stuff. So it could be just the constant having to move between this, this really old sort of SAP-based web interface and things like that. I'm not sure, but yeah, as I said, we'll keep in touch offline and get
good.
It. I just thought I'd add to it.
And like what Maria said, you've got Braille output continues.
Yeah, it does.
Yep.
And
no, this is the same thing I've had.
I turn the Braille. I actually turn the speech off often and just use the Braille because it's more reliable.
Yep, we've been getting several comments on this, and none of us in house are experiencing it yet.
I even went back a build. I went back to the February build because obviously at work I can only run the public builds. We can't run the betas. But I went back to the February build and it still happens. And I even tried 2019.
And it happens there.
Yeah, but it doesn't happen in 2018.
And it didn't happen
Not as much.
in 2019, 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah, so something has changed with sound drivers or Windows 10. Something has changed.
Just
and
another point
your
which may help you.
Yeah.
The version of Windows we have at work is the 1803 version.
Oh, it's an older one.
Yeah. Well,
But do you see it on your personal computer?
No.
Okay.
But I do see it, but not as much.
Okay.
It's much rarer.
And for those of you, the Windows version, a lot of consumers don't quite understand the Windows version and how it works and how ours works too, I guess, for that matter. But so 1803 means that is the release build that they came out with in March of 2018.
Yeah, that's right.
1803. And 1909, September of 2019 is what most people are running. And yesterday, I think I just received I'm not sure if it's 04
2004, which sounds like it's going backwards.
Yeah, I think it's 2004.
Yeah, it is.
And I just got that new version. It came out yesterday. So, and this is the cadence that Microsoft is on is about every 6 to 8 months now.
Yeah.
And they change it quite a bit, but people should try and keep up because they're making some good improvements. Just
one quick thing before I leave it to someone else. just a point, and I'm noticing this in Office 365, so I thought you might want to take a look at it. I don't think we'll get into the June update, but it might be worth. And this has been brought up before. If you're in an Outlook message and you hit, say, Alt-1 to find out who it's from, Alt-2 to get the date, and Alt-3, you know, Alt-1 doesn't, particularly if it comes from a person with a long email address or a list, like, you know, obviously often it'll say list name on behalf of, and then it'll give you the name.
Right.
And yes, my window's maximized. JAWS doesn't read the whole line.
And when you say it doesn't read the whole line, so it always reads something, but it doesn't.
Yeah. It always says from. It'll say from, and then it'll read about the first 5 or 6 characters, and then sometimes the first 10 characters, and then it'll just stop and stop reading.
But it's inconsistent.
Yeah,
it might be 5, it might be 10.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I've never been able to sort of put in a bug or anything, because it's really strange to kind of explain, and no one seems to be able to reproduce it. Maybe I'll talk to you and you can tandem in or something. You can have a look at it.
Yeah, and when it happens, does it happen all the time?
Yes, 100%. I can reproduce it. I just can't get it to, you know, get a pattern to it.
You can't get anybody else to make it happen.
No.
And is that on the 1803 Windows build?
No.
That's
it
on
just
the new
happens.
stuff. Okay.
It happens here, because I use Outlook personally as well, and yeah, it's 365. This
stuff is quirky sometimes.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I just thought that might be, because I don't know. I personally find those keys to be quite useful, particularly with calendar invites and things like that. You know,
sure.
You can find out exactly who sent it.
Yeah, no, and these are the tough ones. That there's no pattern and we can't reproduce it. It's awful hard to diagnose. So it's kind of like you got to think about it. But it's good to talk about these things. It's very good to hear about them. Don't hesitate to, if you can participate in FS Open Line, these are good things to bring in, Scott, because then, you know, we've got, you know, 100 people listening in, and we've got a lot of people that listen to the recordings of those FS Open Lines.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Thousands of people end up hearing it within a week or two, and if we can describe some issue that others are having, sometimes those conversations will spur people to write about it and send it to us, and it'll help us get to the bottom of it. So.
Yeah, exactly. Cool.
Well, anyway,
okay. Thanks for
that. So how is the LBRL list going that you started?
No, it took off. It took off. I created it because I felt it was something that was missing, and you know, there wasn't one. And I'd seen messages over the years, people saying, "Oh, there's no list. Is there a list? Is there a list?" And I just created it. And I thought, oh, you know, I wrote to a few people. I mentioned it to the Gassman brothers and a few other people, and I thought, oh, okay. And I posted to a local list in Australia because I thought, oh, maybe I'll get, you know, 20 people, 30 people. Well, at the last count, there's 97.
Wow.
So there were 98, but somebody left. So we haven't broken the 100 mark yet. Maybe we will after this call. But it's a really good list. There's some great tips. I haven't had to you know, be a really nasty moderator and ban people or anything like that, which is nice. No, seriously, it's really nice to have, because you're not only learning little tips about the Elbrow, you're also learning JAWS tips with the focus as well.
Exactly.
And I think what's really nice is that, you know, we have people on there from the various dealers around the world. We have a leader group are on there. You know, Vispero's on there. You're on there. Ron's on there. I think Rebecca, you're on there.
Yeah, I'm on there. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry about your mailbox. But you know, like I said, I think it not only helps with the Elbrow, it really helps you with those Braille in commands that a lot of people really want to get into with their focus.
Right. And I think it's a great place to culminate some ideas and changes and things that can be made. And I know Adi Kushner writes to me on a pretty regular basis and fills us in on some of those things that we've just got to keep addressing. And we've made a lot of progress over the years with it. So I think it's going to keep getting better. I think there's a big market for a tool like that. So
Yeah.
And it was great
I
to see
think-
you at CSUN, and I'm sure that had a lot to do with you getting it started too. So
Yeah. Thanks for that. Yeah. No, I'm still using the coffee cup, so it's all good. Still haven't figured out the rubber. We were discussing the rubber.
Yeah, I haven't figured that out yet either. So
when you do, let us all know.
I will.
All right, all good. Thanks for that.
Thanks, Scott.
Okay, we've got a couple of other raised hands here. I'm having trouble unmuting people, but a couple of other questions.
If you unmute them, they have to hit the space bar then to unmute themselves.
Okay,
It's when Zoom updated. So when you unmute them, say who they are, and then they probably have to hit the space bar.
Just a quick point. If you're on your phone, I think if you're actually on a phone, I think it automatically unmutes. That was the problem before. I'm not sure.
Okay. So we've got one question about on the chat. My screen reader from Elijah. My screen reader does not read the settings screen. Any solutions?
The settings screen.
Yeah. I'll just see if I can unmute you. Are they still there?
Hello.
Oh, hi.
Hello.
Yes, I'm having an issue with my JAWS where it does not read my Windows settings screen.
Yes.
I'm not sure. It's been going on since 2016, 2017, now to me in 2020. It's the same. No changes.
Yeah. So this is Windows 10.
Windows 10, the latest build 2004.
The latest build, and this is the thing where if you go into the start menu, I think, and type settings, and you get into settings there are some controls that are not read correctly.
No, nothing is read in the settings screen. Let me show what I mean. I'm here.
But this isn't our settings center. This is the Windows settings page.
Yes, let me show what I mean. So if I go to the settings screen.
Windows X, context menu, display press of
So once I,
Apps and features, A.
how do I go to the settings screen?
PC.
I do know what you're talking about. This is something where UIA.
Okay, I'm in the settings screen now. So when I arrow down in the settings screen, nothing. See, there's no speech. There's in tab. Nothing. It's just totally speechless. I'm not sure what's wrong.
Yeah. So we should make sure that, because I thought we would get some speech here, but it doesn't read everything, has been my experience.
I mean, nothing at all. In fact, there's no speech whatsoever.
So I would suggest that we get you in talking to support. And I mean, you're up to date on everything. You got Windows 10 updated. You got JAWS updated.
Yeah. Yes.
And do you have an older version of JAWS you've tried it with?
Yes, it's been there since 2016.
Yeah, you might try this with Narrator. If
In
this
Narrator,
is
it works fine.
in Narrator, it works.
With NVDA, it works fine with Narrator, but with JAWS, it just will not speak. So I know there's something wrong there. I'm not sure.
Yeah, there is something wrong there. If the other guys are reading it, we should be reading it as well. So something's wrong, and I can't quite solve that one here. I'm afraid you might have to work through support on this one, and I'm sure you've already tried all the, uninstall, remove shared components, reinstall.
Yes, clean install, full clean install, nothing. So
yeah. Well, get it into support in Quantum there, and we'll see if we can escalate that up to our support guys. This is an area that we've had some other people reporting some issues in Windows settings, but generally it's not everything. It's usually a control doesn't report correctly, like when you change a checkbox. It doesn't necessarily announce the state it changed to. So there are some issues there. Some of it's Microsoft, but what you're experiencing seems to be something else.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you
so much. Thank you.
We'll just there's a couple of other quick questions, hopefully. So Nick Goransky, I'll just see if I can unmute you. You've got your hand raised. Goransky, sorry.
Nick, do you have to hit space bar? There you are. How are you, Nick?
Okay, yeah, I'm good. My question has to do with the fact that, okay, I've got an L Braille. It is the L Braille 14. Last I heard on one of the FS casts, you had talked about the L Braille upgrade, the new one. My question has to do with, if I want to stick with the 14 model and not upgrade to the 40, do you have any upgrade path for the 14 yet, or what is the status? And if so, when that upgrade path comes out, what is the status with our licensed copy of Windows? Do we have to get a new license? Or if I was planning on upgrading it to Windows 10 Pro, obviously I would want to wait till I got the new one. How does that operate? And I'm really interested in that that L phone program because I've got an AT&T SIM.
The sound SIM card that goes in. Yeah. So I can't tell you exactly what the answers are. I do not believe that Alita Group has any upgrade path for the particular device that you've got on that 14 device. So there may be, are you in the US, Nick?
Yes.
Yeah, there may be some sort of an upgrade path to basically turn in the old unit and get something off on a newer unit.
Okay.
And I would probably start checking with our office here over the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
I don't know if it's an option for you this summer, but when the summer conventions are going on, there's usually some good specials and they try and do something for people coming to the shows. And I think they're going to extend that out to the people in the US that attend the virtual conference somehow. So I would direct you to them. I am not the guy that prices the L Braille, so I can't tell you
I understand
any exact specifics on it. But yeah, you would have to upgrade to a newer version.
Okay. And like I say, I don't mind doing that if it gets me good results.
Yeah, the processor alone and the extra RAM in the newer model is much superior to the older one.
That's right.
And I think personally, having a 40 cell when you're running Windows 10 is a lot more valuable than 14 cells. I do think, I don't know if they're going to come out with a 14 cell version. It may be that they come out with something that's a little longer than 14, but not 40. You'll have to wait and see. And I would not anticipate anything this year.
Okay, it's just the reason I got the 14 cell was because of the small compact size.
Small portability. Sure, I understand. Yep, makes sense.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Yep, and we'll take one last quick question. Adam Morris, I'll just unmute you. You've got your hand up.
Hi, Eric. Yep, thanks for a great presentation. Just curious for people who are using Mozilla Thunderbird. I realise that it's not been developed by Mozilla, but it's being updated constantly. Is Vispero going to be doing anything with making the later versions read better with the options and the address book?
That's a good question. There are still a lot of people using Mozilla, so and I haven't been using it. So it's not done by Mozilla now. It's done by somebody else.
That's from what I can gather. It's open source now, but they are releasing versions every couple of months.
So have things going south?
Yep, I think that they are going south. Basically, when you go into the options, it's much harder to navigate the options than what it was. And I have seen instances where you can't navigate the address book in the later versions.
Yeah, you might report that into our support department, and some of the support team certainly install that from time to time and look at it. We ought to try and keep looking at it, make sure it's not on our side. Have you tried it with anything else like Narrator or NVDA?
Yep, it works fine with them because they've actually made add-ons and things for it.
Share that information to us. So if it's working with them and things are going south with us, there's probably something on our side we need to be looking at. We don't get much demand for it anymore. So many people have gone to 365 and Outlook. And so we just don't get a lot of demand. I haven't heard that much about it lately.
Sure, and I have noticed as well that when using voices other than eloquence, that things tend to repeat. That, say, for example, if you Alt-tab between Word and Thunderbird, it'll read out Mozilla Thunderbird probably 3 times.
Right.
Whereas when you use Eloquence, it reads Mozilla Thunderbird once. So I'm not quite sure why that may be.
And that's consistent?
Yeah.
Yeah. You might share that with them too when you report
Sure.
it. But, you know, please send those things in. I know sometimes it seems like it's going into an empty bucket and nobody's ever pulling it out, but it's not the case. Where the support guys are doing a really good job of trying to get these things logged. And the more things we can get logged, the more people talking about it, the easier it is for us to weigh how many people are how many people is this impacting, and we can try and get someone to look at it. But this doesn't strike me as something that would be very difficult for us to take a look at. So it'd be good to try and get this in. And don't hesitate to tell them you're on a webinar with Quantum. I was on there with you, and I even recommended that you get this submitted so that the support guys can get this one logged and we can look at it. Be easy, okay?
Sure, no trouble. Thanks very much, Eric.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks, Eric. There's a couple. Actually, Svetlana from Elite is obviously on the line. She's put in about the Elbrail 14. If you want to stay with the 14 still, it's not available for the fifth generation 14, and there's no immediate plans. Only the 40 still. For considering an update, the dock for the Focus 14.4, but it won't be. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Okay.
And I think that's all the questions. Oh, there was one question about if you search with the window key, it says Cortana. Do you know if that will be fixed? I think that will be a Windows thing, isn't it?
That is a Windows thing, and it's a strange one. It happens the first time, I believe, when you start Windows. The first time you hit the Windows key, you're going to hear it say Cortana. And then I think you get past it and it doesn't happen again. But yeah, it's very annoying.
Okay, well, that's great. Thanks so much, Eric, for your time.
Yep. Well, thank you, Rebecca, for putting this together and staying on top of us. You've been planning this for a month or so, and I appreciate it. And let's come back and do it again.
Yeah, no, that would be great. And I'll just, for anyone in Australia, I've just put up our contact details, or if you need to send anything through, if you think of questions afterwards, you can send it to info@quantumrlv.com.au, or you can always call us on 1300 883 853. And if anybody wants, we can always flick forward to Eric if you've not got Eric's email, but and you can, we've got our website there, quantumrlv.com.au, and we do have, I need to check up on our stock situation, but we have had the Elbrail 40 available to show, so we can definitely do that. So thank you everybody for your time, and
say hello to the team down there at Quantum for me.
I will do. I know a few of them are on the line, so and hopefully we will get you back down here at some point. But
excellent.
It's been great to do this virtually anyway. So thanks very much.
Right. Thank you. Thank you all. Bye.
Bye. Yeah. Have a good evening.